1973, the CIA director ordered the destruction of every document related to the most disturbing programs in American history. He thought he'd buried the evidence forever, but he missed 20,000 files. Those documents revealed that for 2 decades, the CIA had been conducting illegal mind control experiments on American citizens. They drugged people without their knowledge, they destroyed their minds in psychiatric hospitals, and they drove people to suicide. And they did it all in the name of national security. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is MKUltra, a documented CIA program proven by declassified documents and congressional investigations. And what they did is worse than you can imagine. I'm Jeremy Ryan Slate, and today we're investigating the truth about MKUltra. Because once you understand the CIA was willing to do to its own citizens, you'll never trust the government again. Welcome back to the Jeremy Ryan Slate Show. I am your host, Jeremy Ryan Slate, the CEO and co-founder of Command Your Brand. We help our clients to get on some of the biggest podcasts out there. You can grab our free brand authority analysis over at commandyourbrand.com/analysis. Reminder to like this video, leave us a comment, and smash that subscribe button if you want to learn more of history's mysteries. Reminder, you can find me on X. I am at Jeremy Ryan Slate over there as well. To understand MKUltra, we need to go back to the Korean War. In 1953, American POWs were returning home from North Korea, and some of them were saying things that terrified the CIA. These soldiers were confessing to war crimes that they didn't commit. They were praising communism, and they seemed different. The CIA became convinced that the Soviets and the Chinese had developed brainwashing techniques. These are methods to control the human mind. CIA Director Allen Dulles, yes, the same Allen Dulles from Operation Mockingbird, and the Warren Commission became obsessed with closing what he called the mind control gap. If the communists could control minds, well, Americans needed to do it better. Enter Sidney Gottlieb, a chemist with a club foot and a stutter. Gottlieb was brilliant, ruthless, and completely willing to cross any ethical line. In 1953, Dulles put him in charge of a new program, MKUltra. The mission was simple: develop techniques to control human behavior, break down a person's mind and rebuild it, create the perfect interrogation method, and if necessary, create assassins who wouldn't remember what they'd done. The CIA funneled millions of dollars into MKUltra through front organizations. They contracted with 80 institutions, universities, hospitals, prisons, pharmaceutical companies. Most of these institutions had no idea that they were working for the CIA. And Gottlieb's weapon of choice? LSD. He believed that lysergic acid dimethylide could be the key to unlocking and controlling the human mind. Now, here's where it gets truly disturbing. MKUltra wasn't just about giving people LSD and watching what happened. It was systematic torture disguised as science. Take Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron at McGill University's Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal. Cameron was one of the most respected psychiatrists in the world. He'd been president of the American Psychiatric Association, and the CIA gave him funding through a front organization, and he used it to conduct experiments that would destroy dozens of lives. Cameron's technique was called psychic driving. First, he put patients into drug-induced comas for weeks at a time. Then, he'd administer electroshock therapy, which is surprisingly still legal today. Not the standard treatment, but 30 to 40 times the normal intensity. Then, while patients were unconscious or semi-conscious, he played recorded messages on repeat for 16 hours a day. The goal was to completely erase a person's existing personality and rebuild it from scratch. And it worked, but not the way Cameron intended. Patients lost their memories, they forgot their families, and they couldn't speak. Some couldn't control their bladders. They were reduced to the mental state of infants. These weren't criminals or enemy agents, they were ordinary people who'd checked into a psychiatric hospital for depression or anxiety. They came in with treatable conditions and they left as a shell of their former selves. Cameron wasn't the only one. At the Federal Narcotics Hospital in Lexington, Kentucky, the CIA paid doctors to give LSD to drug addicts, mostly black men, for 77 consecutive days. The subjects were told they'd get heroin if they participated. They had no idea they were CIA guinea pigs. At Stanford University, the CIA funded LSD experiments on students. At numerous other universities, researchers gave hallucinogens to subjects without informed consent, sometimes without any consent at all. The CIA even set up fake brothels in San Francisco and New York, called Operation Midnight Climax. They'd lure men in, drug their drinks with LSD, then watch through two-way mirrors to see how the drugs affected them during sex. These men had no idea that they'd been drugged or that they were being watched by CIA agents. Think about that. The CIA was running brothels on American soil, drugging American citizens without their knowledge, and watching them for research purposes. This isn't some wild conspiracy theory. This is a documented fact from declassified CIA files. The story that truly exposes how far the CIA would go to protect MKUltra is the death of Frank Olson. Olson was a biochemist working for the Army's Special Operations Division at Fort Detrick, Maryland. He worked on biological weapons and had knowledge of MKUltra. In November 1953, Olson attended a CIA retreat at a remote cabin in Maryland. Sidney Gottlieb was there, and without telling anyone, Gottlieb spiked the after-dinner drinks with LSD. Olson and several other men unknowingly consumed a massive dose of one of the most powerful hallucinogens known to man. Olson had a severe reaction. He became paranoid, depressed, and convinced that he'd made terrible mistakes in his work. His colleagues said he was talking about quitting, about revealing things he shouldn't. The CIA sent Olson to New York to see a psychiatrist, a CIA-cleared psychiatrist. They put him up in the Statler Hotel with a CIA handler named Robert Lashbrook. On December 28, 1953, at 2:30 a.m., Frank Olson crashed through the window of his 10th floor hotel room and fell to his death. The official story? Well, suicide as always. Olson had been depressed. The LSD had triggered a psychotic break, a tragic incident. The CIA paid the family $750,000 and made them sign a state settlement agreement to never discuss it. But in 1994, Olson's family had his body exhumed. The forensic evidence told a different story. Olson had a skull fracture consistent with being struck on the head before going out of the window. The glass pattern suggested that he'd been thrown, not jumped. And declassified documents revealed that in the days before his death, Olson had told his wife that he'd made a terrible mistake and wanted to quit his job. CIA officials had discussed whether Olson was a security risk. The evidence strongly suggests that Frank Olson didn't commit suicide. In fact, he was murdered by the CIA because he knew too much about MKUltra and was becoming unstable. And the CIA covered it up for 22 years, but Olson's death had one unintended consequence. It made Sidney Gottlieb paranoid. If one death could expose the program, what would happen if more came to light? So in 1973, when Gottlieb retired, he convinced CIA Director Richard Helms to destroy all MKUltra records. In 1973, Richard Helms ordered the destruction of every MKUltra document. Thousands of files detailing 2 decades of illegal experiments were shredded and burned. Helms thought he'd erased the evidence forever. But then came Watergate, and just like Operation Mockingbird, the post-Watergate investigations opened doors the CIA thought were sealed shut. In 1974, investigative journalist Seymour Hersh published a bombshell article in the New York Times exposing illegal CIA domestic operations. Congress launched investigations. The Church Committee started digging. And that's when they found them. 20,000 MKUltra documents that had been misfiled. They weren't in the main MKUltra files that Helms had destroyed. They were in the financial records, budget documents, payment receipts, enough to piece together what the CIA had actually done. In 1977, Senator Ted Kennedy held hearings on MKUltra. For the first time, the American public heard about the CIA's mind control experiments. Victims testified. Documents were declassified, and the horror was exposed. Survivors of Cameron's experiments testified about losing their memories, their identities, and their lives. The families of people who'd been unknowingly drugged demanded answers. Frank Olson's family finally learned the truth about his death. CIA Director Stansfield Turner testified before Congress. He apologized. He claimed the program had ended in 1973, and he had said the CIA had learned its lesson and would never do anything like this again. The government paid settlements to some victims, $750,000 to the Olson family, compensation to some of Cameron's victims, but many victims never got justice. Many died before the truth came out, and the full scope of MKUltra remains unknown because most of the documents were destroyed. Those 20,000 documents that survived, well, they're heavily redacted. Names are blacked out, locations are hidden. Entire programs within MKUltra remained classified to this day. So here's the question. If the CIA was willing to drug, torture, and murder American citizens in the name of mind control research, and they only got caught because of a misfiled financial record, what if we didn't find out about it? Now, the CIA claims that MKUltra ended in 1973. But let's think about what we actually know. MKUltra was the CIA using 1950s and 60s technology, LSD, electroshock, sensor deprivation, but today we have neuroscience that makes those techniques look primitive. We have brain imaging, psychopharmaceuticals, digital manipulation, and technologies we don't even know about. DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, has admitted to funding research on brain-computer interfaces, memory manipulation, and neural engineering. Is that MKUltra 2.0? They'd call it national security research. We know the CIA has used enhanced interrogation techniques at black sites after 9/11. Waterboarding, sleep deprivation, sensory manipulation. Does this sound familiar to you? Those are MKUltra techniques with new names. And consider this. Several MKUltra researchers went to work in the pharmaceutical industry. The techniques they developed for breaking down minds, well, some became the basics for modern psychiatric treatments. The line between therapy and control was always blurry in MKUltra. But here's the really disturbing part. You don't need LSD to control minds anymore. You have social media algorithms that can manipulate emotions, shape opinions, and alter behavior, all without anyone realizing it's happening. Is that so different from what Gottlieb was trying to achieve? The CIA spent 20 years and millions of dollars trying to control human minds. They failed with LSD and electroshock, but they learned. They adapted, and now we live in a world where mass psychological manipulation is easier than ever. Did MKUltra end, or did it just evolve beyond our ability to recognize it? So what do you do with this information? How do you protect yourself when you know the government has a documented history of experimenting on its own citizens? Well, first, understand that national security has been used to justify horrific abuses. When the government says, "Trust us, it's classified," well, remember MKUltra. They said the same thing for 20 years while destroying lives. Second, know your rights. After MKUltra was exposed, laws were passed requiring informed consent for human experiments. But those laws only work if you know they exist and you're willing to enforce them. Third, demand transparency. File FOIA requests. Support investigative journalists. The only reason we know about MKUltra is because of misfiled documents and persistent investigators. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. And finally, learn the patterns. MKUltra wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern. Operation Mockingbird, Operation Northwoods, COINTELPRO, the Tuskegee experiments. When the government gets caught doing something horrific, they apologize, promise reform, and then do something similar with a different name. The CIA counted on Americans never finding out about MKUltra. When they did find out, they counted on people forgetting. Don't forget. Don't let them memory hold us. Because the moment we forget what they're capable of is the moment they're going to do it again. MKUltra wasn't a conspiracy theory. It was a documented conspiracy, proven by classified documents, congressional testimony, and the destroyed lives of victims. For 20 years, the CIA drugged, tortured, and experimented on American citizens. They drove people insane. They erased memories, and they may have murdered Frank Olson to keep him quiet. They only got caught because someone misfiled 20,000 documents. Think about that. If those files had been destroyed like the rest, we'd never know MKUltra existed. So what else don't we know? What programs are running right now that won't be declassified for another 50 years? What will our grandchildren learn about what's being done today in the name of national security? If this opened your eyes to what the government is capable of, smash that like button and subscribe, because we're exposing more declassified operations that prove that conspiracies were actually real. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you think mind control research has ever really stopped, or did they just go underground? And if you want to see how deep the rabbit hole goes, check out my video on Operation Mockingbird, which we just put out last week, where the CIA controlled American media for decades. Or watch my breakdown of the JFK assassination with Roger Stone. Because guess who was on the Warren Commission? Alan Dulles, the man who started MKUltra. They tried to destroy the evidence. They failed. The truth is in the documents. The victims deserve to be remembered. I'm Jeremy Ryan Slate. Question everything, trust nothing, and I'll see you on the next investigation on the Jeremy Ryan Slate Show.